So the only good thing that came out of all this is that the federal government, everybody realized just how much we're worth. The economic impact from we start buying and selling a 5 times quantifier, it's a $4 billion a year industry. A year, economic impact. You know, that's the only good thing that came out of this. And then the worst part about it is the health aspects. You know, I work with Mary Lee Orr, who runs an organization called Lean, and she actually raised funds, bought respirators, bought all kind of stuff, gloves and everything before BP was handing anything out, and gave them to me. I brought them down here to give to the fishermen because I knew everybody that I met, you know, and the stuff I've been doing for years, tell them this stuff, don't go to work for them. It's dangerous. You got to be trained. So when we went to pass them the respirators, they were told by the BP people, if you use them, you lose your vessel of opportunity job. And the problem is, everybody asks why. I said, the problem is, if they would let you use the respirator, it would acknowledge the fact that there is health hazards. And here was BP saying there's no health hazards. Lisa Jackson saying it's like Dawn, cleaning it up, you know, it's just like dishwashing liquid. The Coast Guard people telling Corexit the best thing since Mother Earth. And Europe banned the use of Corexit 3 years prior. Corexit was not supposed to be used in anything 60 feet or below. We don't have anything 60 feet in shore Louisiana, and it was used everywhere. And that's the kind of stuff. So now what's happening, the combination of the Corexit and the oil is actually worse than either one separately. You know, so you've got volatile compounds, you got all kind of different chemicals, benzenes, toluene, that comes out of this. And people are getting sick, and they were being infected and didn't even know it, because it becomes airborne. And that's how I got sick, because I stayed shrimp in the area that was not supposed to have any dispersed oil at all. And then history showed that, yeah, it was being dispersed everywhere. And I stayed shrimping because, you know, I wanted to make a living. I didn't want to work for BP. Actually, they wouldn't hire me at first because I would not stay quiet. And that was part of the rules. If you had the vessel of opportunity, you couldn't report on anything. That was in the contract. You know, I said, well, that's not going to work for me. So we didn't work for BP, you know, for vessel of opportunity. So, and the sad part about down here, a live oyster population is like the canary in a mine. You know, if you don't have oyster production, the oysters clean the water. That's what they do. They're filter feeders. Every year, if you look at our production of shrimp, crabs, and fish and oysters, if the production of oysters is high around the whole area, everything else is up because it purifies the water. That's what they're there for. So when you knock that population down, you know, everything starts to change. Everything, the environment is dependent on the quality, water quality, and it's not there. You know, so, and you know, like the book I showed you about is How to Screw a Fisherman 101. You know, they got you by the balls, so to speak. You know, if you can't make any money, everybody's got bills. You know, it costs money for this boat just to sit here. You got maintenance every year, and it just piles up. You know, so it's let's give them some money and see if they can survive. So there's a lot of us, luckily there's a lot of us whose equipment is paid for. You know, we've been doing this for a long time, okay? So you can take the money, you can sit on it and see. You can make a lot less because you got this little bit coming. But the problem with the settlement, it's supposed to be a settlement works if it's expeditious, if it works quick. Now we're just starting to get the second round of the settlement money. That's not quick. So we don't know when the third one's going to come. And we don't know when the Halliburton money's going to come. Do you call that quick? You know, so you know, and the problem is, even myself, I couldn't throw the dice and say, I'll meet you in court, which I love to do, because now, especially because we knew BP would be gross negligent. If the judge would not come out with gross negligence, well, there's not a cow in Texas, because there's so many things that they did, blatant, you know, so that allows punitive damages to come in. But who can stand 10 years of litigation? You know, there's people now who have died already have died from the exposure already. You know, so they got 11 that died that day, but they got a lot more. There's a lot more sick, really sick. And people can't work anymore, can't fish anymore. Young people too, not people who will beat up like me. And because they went out there and they worked in that stuff. And to them, they said, well, you know, a lot of people said, why did you go work if you were sick? They said, no, he wasn't sick before. He's sick after. I said, but how you going to pay your bills either way? BP wasn't coming up with a bunch of money. You know, some people got good checks. but not everybody. And then when some of these healthy people started getting sick, I mean, they got some of them guys that used to shrimp all the time, healthy as a bull. They don't even go outside anymore. 26, 28, 35, 40 years old. Kids. There's so many documents, Dr. Phil Robichaux. In fact, you ought to try and talk to him before everything's done with. And Mary Lee ended up getting $1 million grant to have a detox place set up. Somebody donated a house in Homer. I donated 22 beds. I drove over middle of the night and delivered the beds for him, and it worked. But that's because she had $1 million. I don't know exactly how much, but she had enough money, and Dr. Mike came and administered and everything else, and it worked. It was just black shit was coming out of these people's pores, And that's how they could say, well, and the problem is when people are sick, they say, well, it could be a cold, it could be something else, and they would never get any doctor to diagnose it as toxic poisoning, because it could go either way. But look at the only variable. We've had times where low oyster production and high oyster production, but you had cycles. Okay, now you got 5 years in a row with no babies. What is the only common denominator? Millions of gallons of oil and millions of barrels of oil and millions of gallons of Corexit. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out.